The Geneva stage, a summit for peace. The world watches Geneva. Diplomats, leaders, and activists gather, each carrying the weight of a fractured world on their shoulders. The Geneva Peace Summit 2024 is not just another meeting, it is a crucible, a test of our collective will. Can nations bridge divides, or will they succumb to the pull of discord? The stakes are high. War in Europe casts a long shadow. The conflict in Ukraine has reverberated across continents, stressing global supply chains and igniting an energy crisis. Food security is threatened, and economic uncertainty looms large. The Geneva Summit is a platform for dialogue, a space to seek common ground amidst the storm. The world needs this summit. It needs a commitment to peace, a rejection of violence. The urgency is palpable. Every headline, every news report underscores the fragility of our interconnected world. The shadow of conflict hangs heavy, a constant reminder of what is at stake. Geneva stands as a beacon of hope, a symbol of diplomacy, a testament to the enduring power of dialogue. The summit represents a chance to de-escalate tensions, to build bridges, to find solutions. The world holds its breath, watching and waiting. Ukraine's plea, seeking solidarity from the south. Ukraine faces a monumental challenge. It is embroiled in a conflict that threatens its very existence. Beyond military aid, Ukraine seeks something more: political solidarity. It needs nations to stand with it, to condemn the aggression it faces, and it is looking south, to the African continent, for support. Africa is a continent on the rise. Its nations are asserting their place on the global stage. They are key players in the 21st century geopolitical landscape. Ukraine recognizes this. It understands that African voices carry weight, that their stance on the conflict matters. Ukraine's strategy is multi-pronged. It aims to highlight the shared challenges posed by the conflict. Food security is a pressing concern for many African nations. The war's disruption of grain exports from Ukraine has had a direct impact on African economies. Ukraine seeks to emphasize this shared vulnerability, to build a bridge of common concern. Furthermore, Ukraine seeks to underscore the principles at stake. The violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity are not just Ukrainian concerns, but universal ones. They are enshrined in international law, the bedrock of the global order. Ukraine's appeal to Africa is an appeal to these shared principles, a call for a united front against aggression. A balancing act, Africa's delicate diplomatic dance. African nations find themselves at a crossroads. The conflict in Ukraine presents them with a complex diplomatic challenge. They are courted by both sides, each seeking their support. Choosing a side carries risks, tilting the balance in a delicate geopolitical equation. Many African nations have historical ties with Russia. The Soviet Union's support for liberation movements during the Cold War era forged bonds of solidarity. Russia has continued to cultivate these ties, offering military and economic support to various African governments. However, African nations also value their relationships with the West. They are integrated into the global economy, with strong trade and investment links to Europe and the United States. They also benefit from development assistance and humanitarian aid from Western countries. The Geneva Summit throws this delicate balancing act into sharp relief. African leaders face a difficult choice. Siding openly with Ukraine risks alienating Russia, but remaining neutral could be perceived as tacit approval of the aggression. Africa's response is nuanced and multifaceted. Some nations have openly condemned the Russian invasion, while others have adopted a more cautious stance. Some emphasize the need for dialogue and a negotiated settlement, while others prioritize humanitarian assistance to those affected by the conflict. Russia's shadow counter-narratives and influence. Russia is not a passive observer in this diplomatic dance. It understands the importance of African support and has launched its own counter-offensive to win over hearts and minds. Its strategy hinges on a carefully crafted narrative, one aimed at undermining Ukraine's position and justifying its own actions. Russia's narrative focuses on historical grievances and Western hypocrisy. It accuses the West of double standards, of ignoring its own transgressions while condemning Russia's actions. It points to past Western interventions in Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan as evidence of this hypocrisy. Furthermore, Russia emphasizes its role as a counterweight to Western dominance. It presents itself as a champion of a multipolar world, a world where power is more evenly distributed. This message resonates with some African nations who see Russia as a partner in challenging the existing global order. Russia also leverages its economic and military ties with African nations. It offers debt relief, investment opportunities, and military hardware. These incentives are difficult to ignore for some African governments facing economic challenges or security threats. The information war is as intense as the diplomatic one. Russia uses its state-controlled media and online platforms to spread its narrative, often resorting to disinformation and propaganda. It seeks to sow discord and confusion, to muddy the waters and undermine Ukraine's appeals for support. Section 5. Diplomatic tightrope. Ukraine's special envoy in focus. At the heart of Ukraine's diplomatic push is its special envoy to Africa. This individual carries the weight of a nation's hopes on their shoulders. Tasked with navigating the complex web of African politics, they build bridges and rally support for Ukraine's cause. The special envoy must be a skilled diplomat, able to communicate effectively with diverse audiences. They must understand the nuances of African politics, the historical baggage, and contemporary challenges facing each nation. They must be sensitive to cultural differences and adept at building trust. Their mission is challenging. They must counter Russia's narrative, exposing its flaws and highlighting the dangers of its actions. They must articulate Ukraine's position clearly and convincingly, emphasizing the principles at stake and the shared interests at play. The special envoy's success hinges on their ability to connect with African leaders and their people. They must demonstrate empathy, understanding, and respect. They must build genuine partnerships, not transactional relationships based on short-term gains. The special envoy walks a diplomatic tightrope. They must be assertive in advocating for Ukraine's interests, yet avoid alienating potential allies. They must be persistent in their efforts, yet patient in understanding the complexities of African decision-making. Section 6. The African Chorus, Diverse Voices, Shared Concerns. Africa is not a monolith. It is a continent of 54 nations, each with its own history, culture, and political dynamics. Their responses to the Ukraine conflict are as diverse as the continent itself. Some voices are loud and clear, others more muted and cautious. Some African nations have taken a strong stance in support of Ukraine. They have condemned the Russian invasion, called for the respect of Ukraine's sovereignty, and offered humanitarian assistance. They see the conflict as a violation of international law, a threat to global peace and security. Others have adopted a more neutral position. They emphasize the need for dialogue and a negotiated settlement. They call for restraint on all sides and urge a de-escalation of tensions. They focus on the humanitarian consequences of the conflict and prioritize efforts to alleviate suffering. Still others have expressed sympathy for Russia's position. They point to historical grievances and Western hypocrisy. They see Russia as a counterweight to Western dominance and support its call for a multipolar world. They prioritize their own economic and security interests, even if it means maintaining ties with Russia. This diversity of voices is a testament to Africa's growing agency on the global stage. African nations are no longer content to be passive bystanders. They are active participants, shaping the contours of the international order. Section 7. Peace Formulas, Navigating the Labyrinth of Resolutions. The Geneva Summit is not just about pronouncements and declarations. It is about finding a way out of the current crisis. It is about exploring pathways to peace, about navigating the labyrinth of potential resolutions. Multiple peace formulas are on the table, each with its own set of proponents and detractors. Some call for a ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian troops, followed by negotiations to address the underlying issues. Others propose a more comprehensive peace plan, addressing issues of territorial integrity, security guarantees, and economic cooperation. The challenge lies in finding a formula that is acceptable to all parties involved. Ukraine demands the restoration of its territorial integrity and the prosecution of war crimes. Russia seeks security guarantees and recognition of its interests in the region. The international community plays a crucial role in facilitating dialogue and building consensus. The United Nations, regional organizations, and individual nations can exert pressure, offer incentives, and mediate discussions. The search for a peace formula is a complex and delicate process. It requires patience, compromise, and a willingness to engage in good faith. It requires a recognition that there are no easy solutions, that any lasting peace will require addressing the root causes of the conflict. Section 8. The law's long arm upholding international norms. The conflict in Ukraine is not just a geopolitical struggle, it is a battle over fundamental principles. It is a test of the international legal order, a system designed to prevent aggression and uphold the sovereignty of nations. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is a clear violation of the United Nations Charter, which prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. It is also a violation of numerous international treaties and agreements, including the Helsinki Final Act and the Budapest Memorandum. Ukraine has called for accountability for these violations. It seeks the prosecution of war crimes, the payment of reparations, and the restoration of its territorial integrity. It argues that upholding international law is essential to deter future aggression and maintain global peace and security. The international community has responded with a mix of condemnation and sanctions. The United Nations General Assembly has adopted resolutions condemning the Russian invasion and calling for the withdrawal of its troops. Individual nations have imposed economic sanctions and provided military aid to Ukraine. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has launched an investigation into alleged war crimes committed in Ukraine. The ICC's involvement underscores the seriousness of the violations and the commitment of the international community to holding perpetrators accountable. The conflict in Ukraine has highlighted the importance of international law in regulating state behavior and resolving disputes. It has also exposed the challenges of enforcing international law, particularly when powerful states choose to disregard it. Section 9. Beyond the Summit, Shaping the Future Global Order. The Geneva Peace Summit is not an isolated event. It is a moment in a larger historical arc, a point of inflection in the evolution of the global order. The outcome of the summit will have ripple effects, shaping the geopolitical landscape for years to come. The conflict in Ukraine has exposed the fragility of the existing global order. It has shown that the norms and institutions designed to prevent aggression are not always effective when powerful states choose to disregard them. The summit represents an opportunity to address these weaknesses, to strengthen the international legal framework, and to build more effective mechanisms for conflict resolution. It is a chance to forge a new consensus on the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. The summit also offers a chance to reshape the global power balance. The conflict has accelerated the shift towards a multipolar world, with rising powers like China and India asserting their influence. The summit provides a platform for dialogue and cooperation among these emerging powers, as well as with the established powers of the West. The outcome of the summit will depend on the willingness of all parties to engage in good faith, to compromise, and to prioritize the common good over narrow self-interest. It will require leadership, vision, and a commitment to building a more just and peaceful world. Section 10. Geneva's Echo, a ripple of hope or a crescendo of conflict. The Geneva Peace Summit will conclude, the delegates will disperse, and the world will hold its breath. Will the summit's echo be a ripple of hope, a sign of progress towards peace, or will it be a crescendo of conflict, a harbinger of further escalation? The stakes are high. The world watches, waiting to see if diplomacy can prevail, if dialogue can bridge divides. The hopes of millions rest on the shoulders of the negotiators, on their ability to find common ground and forge a path to peace. The outcome of the summit is uncertain. Success is not guaranteed. The challenges are immense, the obstacles formidable. But the very act of gathering, of engaging in dialogue, represents a glimmer of hope in a world darkened by conflict. The world yearns for peace. It craves a future free from violence, a future where dialogue triumphs over discord, where cooperation trumps confrontation. The Geneva Peace Summit represents a step towards that future, a testament to the enduring power of hope. The summit's legacy will depend on the actions that follow. Will the commitments made in Geneva be translated into concrete steps towards peace? Will the momentum for dialogue be sustained? Will the world seize this opportunity to build a more just and peaceful future? The answer lies not just in the halls of diplomacy, but in the hearts and minds of people around the world. It lies in our collective will to choose peace over conflict, to choose hope over despair.